sponsored by Heart Mobility, revolutionizing those steel metal grey grab bars from the 1960s with their newest product, Safety Grip. If you're tuning in live, please use the chat to introduce yourselves and ask any questions along the way. Our guest today will answer them at the end of the show. Today's guest is Karlin D. Soelberg, the founder and CEO of Empowered Fitness and Recovery LLC, a premier wellness club in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Known for her bold science meets soul approach, Karlin helps women break through burnout, balance their hormones, and rediscover their strength inside and out. As a best-selling author of Get the Edge, Hormone Health for Women, Karlin guides readers to understand the real story behind their changing bodies and reclaim their energy through smarter movement, recovery, and mindset. Her work blends the intensity of fitness with the power of restoration, showing that sustainable results come from harmony, not hustle. As a Yoga Alliance registered yoga teacher and passionate advocate for women's health, Karlin's mission is to help women thrive through every decade and not just survive them. Through Empowered Fitness and Recovery, she's redefining what it means to age strong, live vibrant, and feel unstoppable. Karlin, what a powerful introduction. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, so let's start with how you got into this. What first led you to focus on specifically hormone health and fitness? Was it personal, professional, both?
So I've always kind of been a mini athlete. I was a cheerleader way back in the day, and I continued to work out throughout my 20s and 30s. But when I turned 40, I had a loud announcement about my hormones. So I ended up having a benign um, fibroid on my uterus. And it wreaked havoc. And unfortunately, it took me a long time to find the proper doctor to get the care that I needed. So, long story short, I ended up bleeding for 77 days. And I had to educate myself because I didn't have the proper care. Though my gynecologist was a female, she was a little bit younger than me. She was in her 30s, and I was brushed off as only having irregular period because I was in my 40s. Like I've hit 40, so everything changed now. I wasn't accepting that answer. So I made sure that I went and found the right answer, but it did take some time. It took longer than necessary, but I was able to find a skilled surgeon who was able to remove the fibroid from my uterus and, and repair everything, keep everything intact, and get me back to normal. But that was my first real introduction as to the way that your hormones work and what they can do when they're out of balance.
Good for you for seeking out those answers and not taking
Mhm.
that for an answer. As someone who has worked behind the scenes in healthcare for almost the past decade, I often, unfortunately, get these sorts of issues get dismissed or undersolved, especially when it comes to women. And so, I'm so glad that you didn't take that for an answer and that you sought out other answers and that you did find an answer and the solution to it. So then you took this and you built a clinic and now you're bridging fitness and sports recovery. What was the gap there and what motivated you to create that space?
Sure. I educated myself in my 40s a little bit about the hormones and then kind of went on my merry business. And then when I was 48, I started to have perimenopausal symptoms that I wasn't really aware of. I didn't know what they were. I chalked it up to work stress, or I chalked it up to my diet hasn't been so great. And again, not wanting to take a less than an optimal life as an answer, I decided to do some research, and I did find out that they were perimenopausal symptoms. So, in balancing my hormones, I dug deep into research and was very interested in cold plunge and infrared sauna and red light therapy. And I started to experiment with those and really research and see the benefits, the overall health benefits that they have, but also how they affect hormones and the balance that we can really get. So, they're great for muscle recovery after working out, but they're so good for balancing hormones and just quality of life at every stage.
That's really
So the gaps
interesting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, to answer your question. So the gaps that I was seeing was I was going to one place for some recovery services, so I couldn't know one location. And then on the fitness side, I had 3 different memberships to get the, fitness that I wanted. So I had a personal trainer in one place, I had a yoga membership at another place, and then I had group fitness at another place. So I was running all over town just and paying multiple memberships, to get the things that I wanted. So, my director of fitness, Tony Figueroa, and I decided to come up with the concept of putting these 2 modalities together, the fitness and the recovery, so that we can help men and women optimize their life.
Yeah, that's great. I want to one, I mean, I that's crazy that you had to go to like 3 different places to get everything that you wanted. I see that a lot, we see that a lot in clinical practice too, where,
Mm.
a lot of us operate as private practitioners and we only offer what we're licensed in, but then they also need, so I'm an OT, but they also need physical therapy and they maybe also need speech therapy and they're going to 3 different places to get those 3 different services, right? Or 3 different providers are going to their house, which is ideal, but that's not always a possibility or an option. And I always think about that. We have so many more multidisciplinary clinics now, but it's not often that it has everything that someone could want. And I always think about like, what if there were just these huge one-stop shop options for like everything you could possibly need or want? And so it looks like you've created somewhat of a mix in that space, which I think is wonderful. You mentioned something about not understanding initially that you were experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. I do feel like many women only start learning about their hormones when something feels off or something doesn't feel right. What do you wish, after everything you've kind of learned, what do you wish more women understood earlier about hormonal changes that sort of happen across the lifespan and how to really get on top of that?
So I would say first realize that hormones aren't just about fertility and menopause. There's this whole life that's in between, and before and after, where our hormones come into play. And they are your friend. They do help everything in your body function. Um, they I feel like they get a negative connotation because they're so tied to menopause that it's often discounted how much we need them just to function. You can't live without them. And so if people realize the influence that hormones have on energy and metabolism and focus, emotional balance, um, and if they pay attention to that early when things are going well, I think they'll sooner recognize when something is starting to go awry.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do feel like in my age group, everyone only talks about hormones as they relate to fertility, and not necessarily anything beyond that. Although there is more and more awareness around the different phases and for hormones and how that impacts like your ability to work out and recover from working out and just how you might feel overall, which I've seen an improvement in over the last year, I'd say, thanks to social media trends. I feel like a lot of that education comes around, which is nice to see. But also, I do feel like it needs to be better educated so that everyone can understand its impact. Now, having seen and learned sort of how it does impact not just fertility or menopause, but everything across the lifespan, can you walk us through the shifts that women or men experience throughout their life when it comes to hormones, but then specifically, you know, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, and how that affects things like energy, muscle mass, sleep,
Mhm.
recovery, all of that.
Sure. So yes, an excellent point because our hormones do affect men and women, right? We both have uh, steady levels and then we both have declines at different times in our lives. So in perimenopause specifically is when our estrogen and our progesterones really start to give us like these like tidal waves. Like we go through these high shifts, and that's where things really get out of balance as we're sleep quality. starts to decline, energy levels decline, sex drive, all these things start to come and go, ebb and flow, mood swings, all of it. And and unfortunately, a lot of people think that they do just have to live with it that way because maybe their mom did, or that is, again, what they're seeing more out there on the internet, which thankfully is changing. But that is the time where everything is really starting to get volatile. In menopause, that's when hormone levels start to stabilize, but they're at a lower range. So that's when slower metabolism and muscle loss and loss of bone density, which is really important as we age to be able to hold on to that. That is when that starts. And then muscle recovery becomes harder, especially after higher intensity workouts. So, and then again, it affects sleep, and sleep is like your biggest hormone reset. So, without proper sleep, it really can throw hormones off no matter what age you are or what your stress level is at. Like, sleep is super important for us. And then even men, their testosterone declines, the growth hormone declines as well. And they don't have the same muscle build or the same recovery that they used to have. So that's where a lot of HRT can come into that, hormone replacement therapy too for men. That is becoming a little more talked about as well. That's getting a little more attention.
Yeah, I do think especially that hormone replacement therapy is getting a lot more attention for both women and men. Lately, I've seen just more people sharing their experiences with it too, especially I primarily hear it from the women in my life, but I hear some of them who have started proactively monitoring their hormones or starting to get into some of the treatment options to keep them energetic and keep them going so they don't have to deal with the ups and downs of the hormonal changes every day. And so that really impacts the quality of life, right? Like that really impacts how people continue to work and continue to show up in their day to day. I just think about, I think about like my mom or my grandma who didn't have access to that stuff. And it's one of those things of like, we watched them for years, struggle with some of this stuff. And it really impacted their ability to kind of, just enjoy life. Especially I feel like today, a lot of people um, are still so active in their 50s and 60s and beyond. And to have to deal with low energy and poor rest and aches and pains just because of hormonal shifts that could be managed, I think is a great opportunity for a lot of people that it could benefit or that it could be useful for. I do want to get into, we touched on social media. And of course, with social media comes a lot of misinformation too. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
misinformation online about midlife hormones and how that impacts everything. What are some of the biggest myths and misconceptions that you often find yourself seeing or hearing and or correcting most often?
One of the biggest ones, I think, to your point of what you just said too, but I do hear very frequently from clients is if they're in their late 40s or early 50s, they assume this is the way that their life is going to go. It has been pounded into their head that if they're at this age and they're female, that's just the way it's going to be. I can't lose weight because I'm 52 and, it's just going to be this way. It's just not true. But unfortunately, that is one of the myths that is out there. Another one that also comes up is the other end of the spectrum where, oh, one thing can completely fix all of your hormone problems. It's either one pill or one supplement. And it's a spectrum that works together. So there isn't any one magic bullet that's going to help. I would say that with perimenopause and menopause, it's more about tweaking where you're at, and paying close attention to where you're at, sleep quality wise, stress levels, what your nutrition is, what your recovery is like. Are you meditating? Are you doing yoga? Like keep a little journal for yourself so that then when something isn't exactly, as it was, that can help you and your practitioner, identify where you're at or what might be helpful to get you back in alignment, so to speak. Um, I think another thing too that I hear a lot from some newer clients is they think that it might be too late. And it truly is never too late. Like we have clients that range from 23 to 84. And we have a lady in her 70s who has never worked out before, and she is just now learning how to do sit-ups. Like she's always walked, always done cardio, but she is now learning and getting those muscles, and she's in her 70s. So it's never too late.
I love that you pointed that out. It really is the whole like it's too late to do anything mentality in life, is so I almost feel like it's like carved into our thought processes. Like that's just how we're raised to think and believe. And it really applies to health in a big way because people think that if you've always lived a certain way, you can't change it when you get older. It might be a little harder, right? But it's not impossible. And I do appreciate you saying that. Can you talk a little bit more about how hormones interact with exercise and recovery, especially like you just mentioned with strength training or endurance work
Mhm.
as women get older?
Yeah. So let's see. So estrogen and growth hormone decline, and we don't recover as quickly as we age. So lifting weights supports muscle and bone health, and like recovery along with that, it reduces inflammation. So then it helps us to come back and be able to train, and it's not about the intensity level so as much as it is doing the right combination of things for the stage that you're at. So sometimes you're going to want to be more cardio heavy, or you're going to want to be more strength training, or really, depending on stress levels and where your hormone levels might be at, you might want to focus more on an actual reset where you need to spend more time with recovery, restorative yoga, things that really calm the mind, which also then balance out your hormones.
That's interesting. And I think that feeds into my next question here is on for women who are noticing changes in their strength or body composition or stamina, what are those realistic fitness approaches that actually work with their hormones and not against them if they're so intertwined?
So I think moving away from, like a more is better mindset. It isn't always about more. It really is more about the right combination of things, and not losing the motivation to change. Right, hormone efficiency can be um, somewhat of a mystery, and you have to be a detective. But you can also do like shorter, intentional workouts plus recovery to get the same results as maybe earlier you would have trained harder and done more cardio.
Isn't that so it's so funny because not funny, but, like, we are detectives because all of our bodies are so different and hormones impact us so differently, and what works for one person might not necessarily work for another person, and so we do become detectives of our own bodies to figure out what's gonna work.
Yes.
So when you're So I think you mentioned some of this of like, trying to figure out like when should it be a slower day versus like a go heavy day versus all of that.
Mhm.
How can women adapt their training schedules or recovery practices around hormonal fluctuations, especially let's say during perimenopause or in early menopause? And I think part of this,
Mhm.
let's like take a step back a little bit and even talk about it because I think a lot of women don't know about this, but like how do people track their hormonal fluctuations? Like how do people even know how to monitor that to fix or adapt their training schedules?
Mhm. Um, okay. So to answer your question of like tracking, so let's start with that because like you mentioned, you don't need to wait until you're in your 40s or your 50s to start to pay attention or when something goes wrong. And the better detective that you can be at that stage actually starts earlier. So if you're in your 20s and maybe you are coming up on planning a family or something like that, it does help to get to know your body, track the cycles that you have. the days that they are. One of the best books that I ever read was called Woman Code by Alyssa Vitti. Highly recommend it. It came to me at a time in my life when I really needed to get educated about my hormones and start to track them, and that was the first one that got me on my way. So highly recommend that book. But to just start tracking, it doesn't have to be long and involved and very detailed, but just an overall, what's your average sleep in a week, or what was it that day? What is your average nutrition intake like? How much protein are you really getting? Are you getting too many carbs? Things like that you can work with a practitioner, functional or conventional doctor with, a nutritionist, a personal trainer or a coach. There's many resources, aside from just us, that you could go to help you get underway. But again, starting early and knowing whatever feels average for you. All right, not good or bad, but where is kind of your set point? And then when things start to change, because they will, we're human beings, and everything with life changes. So they will change depending on stress, depending on age, depending on overall health. But you'll then be able to see, okay, well, I used to sleep this long, now I'm only sleeping this long. But if women get to know their cycles and know what phase they're in their cycles, and realize that, when they're in their follicular stage, the estrogen is high, and when they're in their menstrual cycle, the progesterone is low. And so that's why they don't have energy. And that's why they're craving all the carbs and the sugar to give them the energy. That's what the brain is telling them to do. But we're used to riding the wave as females. We're used to that for those of us that have cycles. That we're used to doing that and navigating, and we maybe don't always know why we're doing what we're doing because we've grown up with it since teenagers. Uh, but understanding where you are and then understanding when something is different will help you alleviate problems further down the road, and also help you and a practitioner figure out what your best course of action is to get you back to normal faster.
That's a great point. There's a lot of comprehensive like functional blood testing that gets done now too, to be able to track a lot of like your hormonal levels and things like that. And it's not something that I ever thought of before. I always, again, I always attributed, monitoring hormones, looking at hormones, things to that, like to fertility and to menopause. Like those were the two things in my head. And then now, as I've, um, you know, uh, been better about, or not better, but like more curious about just how do we maintain our health over our lifespan. Um, that was one of the areas that was included in one of the holistic functional blood panels, blood testing that I do. And I remember the first time I got my report and I like looked at it and I was like, why are they testing this? Or like, why are they looking at this? And it was just like, I just didn't understand. I mean, I thought it was great for me to know, like, okay, cool, like my numbers look good, right? But like from a health standpoint, I didn't really understand why it was important to look at them. And it came with like a little narrative on why it was important and all of that stuff. And that just really made me understand better of like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And now, we do it every 6 months. And so it helps me track it essentially over time of like, okay, this is still looking good. This is still looking good. Or like, hey, these are lower than last time, or these are higher than last time. Like, what's going on? What's different? It's very similar to how we get our regular lipid panels and blood panels of like, right? Like, how's your glucose doing? How's your blood count doing? How's your iron doing? Vitamins, like all of that. And I think it's a newer concept that we should be monitoring our hormones in a similar fashion.
Absolutely. I love that you are doing that at your age, and you're just ahead of the curve, right? You're saving yourself headache down the road, but you're really optimizing your health now, and you'll know soon if anything is off. And then you can be on it right away. So that I applaud you. I think that's wonderful. You are younger than me, so I'm 53. So I actually do my I do mine quarterly, so that I know where mine are at, because I am on hormone replacement therapy. So if there is any tweaking to do, I don't want to wait 6 months. I want to be
Right.
proactive, and I want to take care of it in 3 months. So yeah,
Right.
I love that you're doing
Yeah.
that.
Thanks. But yeah, no, I mean, and I think that's even a better point that you made is like, it's again, I'm going to relate it back to people, what people are familiar with, right? Like if you're on blood pressure medication, if you're on diabetic medication, if you're on vitamins because you have low iron or low vitamin B12 or D, right? All the things that I have. You do want to check on that quarterly if you're taking supplements or if you're taking medications,
Yeah.
because you want to
Yeah.
make sure if it needs to be increased or decreased in dosage, right? So very similar like concept of, I think, that needs to be followed here too, that you're saying with hormone therapy.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned was sleep, and I think you mentioned it to me before, that that was an area that was really challenging for you years ago. I think you mentioned like, and you were sleeping like an hour, maybe.
Yes.
What
Yes.
role? That's insane, but also like must have been
Well,
just exhausting for you.
beyond words. I that was my introduction to perimenopause, and I didn't know it. So I was actually sleeping. It got to a point where sleep was really hard to come by, but then I was getting no more than 1 hour a night, and what that does to your body and to your mindset is incredible. There really aren't any words. You kind of feel like you're going crazy, and all you want to do is sleep, and you're so exhausted and you just can't. So when I did finally get my first saliva test and I had my full hormone panel done, that was when I learned that my DH or that my cortisol was
Mhm.
extremely low, and that was my reason for not having sleep. So where a
Wow.
conventional doctor wanted to put me on birth control pill to balance hormones because I was 48, when I got that panel back from a functional medicine doctor and realized that I didn't need any estrogen, I had plenty of that, but I didn't have my DHEA to kickstart my other hormones. So that helped to get my cortisol going. So that was what I started with the hormone replacement therapy was DHEA. But back to your question about sleep, I did after I started the DHEA, then I really had to take sleep into my own hands because I couldn't function anymore that way. So I ended up making sure that I had blackout curtains, still do. Um, I sleep at 65 degrees. No matter what time of year it is, it's 65 at bedtime. And I always try to make sure I'm not 100%, but I try to make sure that I do a wind down process before I go to sleep. One of my favorite things to do is restorative yoga. Even a pose or two for 10, 15 minutes can really help to just activate the parasympathetic nervous system, get you in a calm space, and you can really sleep. Yoga Nidra is really great. There's a lot of things that you can do to unwind. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, but one should avoid caffeine and alcohol right before bed for the best quality of sleep. I probably don't have caffeine. Very rarely do I have caffeine, maybe after 11 a.m. And really now I only have one cup of coffee in the morning. I don't have multiple like I used to. Um, as we age, sometimes the body doesn't accept caffeine as well as it did when we were younger. But yeah, eliminating that, eliminating screen time, either on the tablet or the phone or the TV an hour before bedtime to get those blue lights away from your brain will help you to get to sleep faster. And I have found two of the best things for sleep. Well, restorative yoga is really good, but red light therapy helps me to sleep much better, and then also meditation. So the more consecutive days in a row of meditation that I do, the better the quality of sleep.
And you do that right before bed.
No, not all the time. With meditation, meditation's kind of magical. It doesn't really matter what time of day you do it. Your body appreciates it at any time. So even if I meditate in the morning, it will still have an impact on my sleep that night.
Yeah. I think those are all great points. Sleep is an area that I often educate family caregivers on when they're dealing with a lot of stress from caregiving. And it's one of those similar processes of, have a wind down routine, limit your alcohol and caffeine. Screen time is usually the hardest for people. Um, for different reasons. I think the older population's used to TV before bed. For us, we're on our phones before bed. So there's a difference there. We don't have a TV in our bedroom, but we have our phones.
Good.
And so it's like, but I also do, part of it is what are you doing on your phone before you're going to bed? If you're doing a lot of stimulating activity, then that's not going to be helpful. But I like to do like a wind down read. Versus, physical books are always helpful or better. But if that's not an option, then even just like a reading where don't read a mystery book, but if you're reading
Yes.
like something
Yep.
that could potentially help you fall asleep, then that's often okay. But I sleep is so important. It's something I've been a huge advocate for. I was the boring college kid who like slept 8 to 9 hours every night. It was like I knew it was important for me to be able to do well in school and feel well and all of that. And still to this day, it's like anywhere from 7 to 9 hours every night. Like that is one of my non-negotiables of making sure I get good rest.
Awesome.
Um, but one of the things is like it's not just the quantity of sleep, right? It's the quality of sleep.
Mm,
And so even
absolutely.
if you do get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, it's not that it's necessarily going to be harmful if it's really good sleep. But if I'm sleeping 8, 9 hours, but I'm waking up 4 times at night, then that's not helpful to me either. And so I think
Exactly.
it's really important for people to learn that piece of it too, where it's the quality of sleep too, not just the quantity. And so things like those blackout curtains, sound machines,
Mhm.
anything that is going to prevent you from potentially waking up in the middle of the night um, is helpful. Now, specifically, is there something within sleep that plays a role in hormone regulation and recovery?
Uh, there is. I mean, it just does help to balance overall your hormones. It just is really the greatest reset for your hormones that you can do.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get back into like a good sleeping pattern?
I think probably I started to notice within a week of being on the DHEA that I was able to sleep more than an hour. But I think to really get back to the point where I could sleep for 6 or 7 hours, that probably took almost a month.
Yeah. And that's the other part. Like, it's not an overnight fix. Like, this stuff takes a while and you have to stick with it.
It does. It does. And you have to listen to your body as you do tweak, right? If you make a change, even if it's to your sleep and you're not on any supplementation, you still need to pay attention to, okay, well, did this actually help me? Was I tossing and turning more? Is there something that's different than the last time? Like it all
Mhm.
paying attention to your body and how you react, how you feel the next day, how you feel the next week really makes an impact on your overall health and your vitality.
Yeah. Yeah. You've talked a lot about red light therapy, and
Mm.
it seems like it's something that you really enjoy. It's been gaining traction from all, I almost feel like in multiple industries. I'm seeing it a lot for people who work in skincare. I'm seeing it from makeup artists. I'm seeing it from dermatologists. There's a lot more traction on the benefits of red light therapy. You're speaking of it from like a general like perspective of like red light therapy helps with hormone regulation. Can you explain what it is, how it works, and what the benefits might someone can actually expect from it?
Sure. I am a huge fan of red light. Huge fan. So sorry, I've got a little puppy here.
Okay.
Red light is specific wavelengths that stimulate the mitochondria. So they're like the energy factory of the cells. And when the cells are charged, they can repair. So that's where the muscle recovery and that comes in. But it's also really great for people who are diabetic, for neuropathy, inflammation throughout the body. It helps to produce collagen, and that also helps to support the joints. It helps for the aesthetics. It just repairs and rejuvenates the cells throughout your entire body, depending on the unit that you have. But the one that we have is a full body plus face. Um, it can help with the smoother, healthier skin. It helps with circulation, and it also helps to activate melatonin in your brain. So that also is where the sleep quality and the effects of red light can help with sleep as well.
Are there parameters on red light therapy, like how long, how often, how, what could be considered harmful?
I have yet to come across anything that is harmful. with red light therapy. I do think that you reach a point of no, like there's not a benefit necessarily to doing it every day. Having time for yourselves to regenerate and having maybe 24 hours for sure, or 48 hours in between sessions, excuse me, 48 hours in between sessions. 24 hours, you just reach that point of where you're not really getting any more benefit. So and it isn't exactly the most budget friendly option. So I would say make sure that you're spacing it out. 2 times a week is probably what is most beneficial for most people, depending, unless they have something severe that they're dealing with. Again, I haven't heard anything or come across any negative uh, areas with red light therapy, but I will say something that's very important when doing it, especially if it's a full body, is you want to make sure that you're hydrating. It does kind of dry out the cells depending on the programs that it's set at. Ours, it's a 20-minute session. So it's not long, it's painless. It warms up. I always tell people it's like a warm hug. That's as hot as it's going to get. You may sweat a little bit because you also detox while you're in there, but or while you're laying there, I should say. You're not in there, but they're mats, the unit that we have. So someone lays on the mat and it's a full body mat, and then we place mats over that. So kind of sandwiched in between, almost like a sleeping bag. And then there's a face unit that comes over and does that separately. And what's great about ours is that we're able to program each one. So the body mats are actually 2 separate units. So if somebody maybe just got done working out and they wanted to do muscle recovery, we can set, say, their upper body for muscle recovery, but maybe they tweak their ankle. Well, we can set the lower mat for inflammation. So we can specifically target with our red light therapy things, and then we can do anti-aging on their face. So they get all of that in one treatment in 20 minutes that doesn't hurt. And most people always come out and say, I feel so relaxed. That was so good. And then oftentimes I hear how good the sleep quality was after. But yeah, drinking a lot of water is extremely important when doing red light therapy.
That's really good to know. Are there, so you said your sessions are 20 minutes. Have you seen other
Yes.
people do like longer or shorter or like other other parameters?
I have. I can tell you that it does depend on the quality of the red light that's being used. I have come across some that they're calling it red light and it's actually pink. So you're not getting the same benefits. There's always knockoffs when it comes to something that's really good and really popular and not exactly budget friendly. So I would be cautious of something that is a home buy, like maybe something that you can get off the internet and that is claiming major results at a very low price. You probably get what you pay for. Um, it may not be harmful, but you might not get the same benefits as you would with a real unit.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah.
No, I mean, that makes a good point. Like I said, it's been gaining so much traction, especially online, and so many people are investing in them, buying them, whatever. And so oftentimes, what happens when there's a huge demand, supply starts to dwindle in quality, right? And so then you can find a lot of options that are maybe not appropriate or accurate or the right fit. And then does everybody benefit from this? Are there certain types of women based on age, lifestyle, or health status who can see the most benefit from these types of recovery tools, or some who may not benefit as well?
Like we talked about earlier, it is never late. There is all, and it's never too early, quite frankly. There is always a benefit that comes from these modalities that we use. The red light therapy, the cold plunge is so good for cognitive function. It is so good for being alert, for really being able to have the energy that you want to get through the day. It kind of gives you the most bang for your buck. For up to 2 minutes of your time, you can really be alert and just smash your day. And infrared sauna and red light therapy, they're both really great at lowering cortisol, excuse me, and inflammation throughout the body. They're detox. They're so good for sleep quality, for muscle recovery, for stress relief. Everyone and anyone, male, female, at any age, can definitely benefit from that. And to that, I would also add that, really seasoned athletes, people who are running for marathons, people who are training on a regular basis and maybe going after that specific sports goal, the recovery is even more important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always like to add a disclaimer, obviously this information has research back to it, and there's a lot of information on the benefits. But if you have certain chronic conditions or if you have diseases, it's always important to make sure that you're working with your doctor to make sure that this stuff is well monitored as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things you've focused on a lot is recovery. And to me, that means muscle recovery. But there's probably a lot of other not versions, definitions for what recovery could look like too. And so what does recovery mean to you in the context of women's health?
Recovery can mean sports recovery. It can be the muscle recovery. I would define it as anything that makes your body, mind, and soul better, right? If that is meditating, if that is getting in the sauna, if whatever it is that helps you live the most vital life that you can, that is recovery. That includes sleep. Like that's everything that we've talked about so far today.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we touched on all of the direct daily practices that impact hormone health and just recovery in general, right? From sleep to activity to uh, daily habits with like different like recovery tools. One of the things we didn't really touch on was nutrition and how that plays a role as well. Is there specific nutritional habits that benefit or promote good hormone health?
Yes, it does kind of depend. Well, let me back that up. Yes, nutrition is absolutely part of, as you were listing off everything that we had already discussed. In my mind, I went, "Oh, we didn't discuss the nutrition," which is one of the biggest recovery options that there are, which is why proper nutrition, especially after a workout, is so very important. Making sure that you're getting your protein in the course of a day for hormonal balance, or even just recovering from a workout is very important, but making sure that you're getting enough protein so that you can hold on to the muscle that you're trying to build. But then so that you're not, if in, you don't want to lose any of the muscle. So if you're not getting in enough of your caloric intake that is needed for what you're doing, then your body can actually lose muscle instead of holding on to it. So we really stress keeping the protein up and where it needs to be, but then also making sure that the carbs that are eaten, and we do recommend carbs. We don't recommend eliminating them. It's a well-rounded meal. We also want to make sure that the carbs are complex carbohydrates that and that they're portioned, appropriately for each individual based on their weight and based on whatever their goal is, because everybody comes in with a different goal. Some just want to feel better. Some actually have that marathon that they're going. We just had two that ran in the Chicago Marathon. But they have a specific fitness goal that they want to hit, or a weight loss target, something that they want to do. So we customize all workouts and all nutrition plans for exactly whatever that person's goal is. It is you come in and everybody is on the same program. This is customized, and then it's customized to your day. So I mentioned Tony Figueroa earlier, the director of fitness. He makes sure that he talks to every single client before he puts them through a workout. He asks, how was your sleep? How was your week? How was your work? What's your stress level? What's going on with your kids? Like, he finds out where they're at so that he can make sure that he can get the most benefit to them.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note. A lot of us, go day to day, we do our workouts, but then some days we feel like we didn't have a good workout, and it might have been because it was the wrong workout for that day, right? Maybe, like you mentioned, like if you didn't sleep well, or maybe you had a day full of parties yesterday and you just ate like crap all day, and then you're going to feel like
Yep.
crap in the gym the next day, right? Um, and so I think it's important to also bring that awareness to your body and learn what that means and what that feels like, so that, just because it's strength training day doesn't always mean that you have to do strength training if that's not what you're feeling up to, right? There are many days. I like cardio. I'm an aerobic exercise person, so strength training's always a drag for me anyways. But especially on those days when I'm not feeling well, I'm like, I'm just gonna go for a run. And like that will
Yep.
then help me feel better so that maybe I can do something else later, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it's important for people to know that, there has to be some flexibility in that too, based on how your body's feeling.
Yeah. Very important.
Are there any other like technical, practical areas that we missed before we go into some of those broader reflections on this that you'd like to touch on?
Not that's coming to mind. The nutrition was the one that we missed.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I'm
I
glad
got
that we
there.
caught it.
Yeah, I got there. So, we've talked a lot about how, a lot of this stuff is like gaining traction and it's not, yet mainstream, but people are learning about it and utilizing it
Yeah.
and being better about being more in tune to it. How can healthcare professionals and fitness coaches and dietitians and just the whole ecosystem here collaborate better to support women navigating hormonal transitions and just in general, I think just managing and monitoring hormone health for both men and women?
I think it's helpful that the discussion is out there now. People are starting to talk about it. I think Western medicine and conventional medicine and functional medicine, I think they're starting to understand each other a little better. And I'm hoping that that is opening up discussions. But I think it really is up to the individual
Hmm.
to build a team around them that supports them. I personally have a conventional doctor. I have a functional doctor. I have a personal trainer. I get my quarterly blood work done. I have a team that is around me that supports me. This can be family, it can be friends, it can be therapy groups. But getting the right practitioners is extremely important so that you have the support that you need when you need it. And I don't know that we're always super good at building that before it becomes a necessity.
Yeah, definitely. I
So
do.
being proactive.
Yeah, that's one of the areas that I try to work in is, proactive versus reactive, but we have such reactive systems that it's burned into our brains. And it's really hard to get people to truly be proactive about their care and their health and whatever it might be. Um, but that is in the options are out there. And if you
Mhm.
individually take ownership of it, then there's possibility there. What advice, I think part of it is being proactive, but what advice would you give to women in their 40s or 50s, or maybe even younger who are just starting to notice these shifts and want to take those proactive steps?
I want to encourage them that they have the power to do so. There is support that is out there. There is good help that is available. There is no reason to settle for a less than optimal life. You absolutely have the right and you have tools available to you to really live the life that you want to live. There is no reason to live less than that.
Yeah, that's really, really important. Looking ahead, what is your hope for how we as a society approach women's health, fitness, and recovery in the next decade?
Next decade, that's going to be interesting. There's a lot coming.
I know.
I think it is going. It's
I
great
know.
though. I think it's going to be fabulous. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to become much more mainstream. My hope is that it will be far more accepted than it is now. That we will shift the mindset from rest and recovery is a luxury and that it really is a necessity so that we can live the life that we're meant to live.
That's so true. And I have started seeing that shift of rest is not just recovery. There's so much more to it. And that it's not, what's it called? Like it's not,
Being lazy.
it's,
We get that one too
yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
it's not being lazy and it's not something that you need to deserve. It's something that's required
Yeah.
for good health,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that it can't just be something that you're waiting to do when everything else is done and when you have time. Because if you don't prioritize it, you're actually not going to have time to do anything.
Yes. And especially as women, we tend to, generally speaking, we tend to put others before ourselves and to do everything else and make sure that that to-do list is scratched off before then we give ourselves the 5 minutes at the end of the day. So
Yep.
hopefully that is part of what's coming in with change too.
Yeah, definitely. Karlin, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here with me today. How does someone find you or
Thank you.
reach out to you or learn more about the things you do, or even if they want to grab a copy of your book?
Oh, that's great. So the book is available on Amazon. There's a book series that's there, but that can be purchased there. Our website is empoweredfitnessrecovery.com. And that's our handle on social media as well. And we're on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, all of them. We're on YouTube. We're on all of them. So we're there. But locally, we're at 3350 West Salt Creek Lane, Suite 109 in Arlington Heights.
Awesome. Well, Karlin, thank you so much once again. This was really a great way to round out our season.
Thank you so much. I appreciated being here.
Absolutely. For those tuning in live, thank you for joining us. This was our last live episode for the season, and I am so grateful to every one of you who has tuned in over the past few months. Thank you for your support, and I will see you next season.